Hello.
I had myself muted.
I was like, wait, I can't hear.
Yeah, nope, I had myself muted. I even did it on purpose earlier and I forgot to turn it off.
No worries. Sorry, my bird is you'll probably see him from time to time.
That's cute. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I mean, he's famous, right? He's got his own TikTok channel.
Yes, it does. I rarely ever post on it. People are always like sometimes when I post, people will be like, "Oh, good, you're still alive," because I don't. I like it was the COVID thing that I bought him right before COVID happened, and then we were trapped together, so I just started like posting random videos, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like
Everyone loves him.
all these followers. Yeah, but then my author career started and I was like, oh, shit, I don't have time to post on all these different.
Right. Welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening.
You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality.
Library. I am Randy Lemons, fantasy author, or RL Rose to those of you in the romance community. I am joined by the brilliant Kayla. Kayla, will you tell our listeners about yourself?
I am a romance author, most notable for writing in the plus size romance niche genre. I think it's become like an actual genre now, plus size genre. And yeah, I've been writing pretty much all my life, but had my book Trick Shot go viral back in Christmas of 2024, three. Three.
One of those years.
Time all blends together. Yeah, so that's like my little like author journey in a nutshell, but that's what that's me.
That's me. I love it. So, but okay, let's go back to like you were, a little girl riding on horseback and in the Wisconsin trails with an imaginary cape and a sword in hand. Like, what was it that started that spark for you?
What's funny is that I don't actually ever remember. It's funny. The reason I say it's funny is because I shared on my Facebook group a couple weeks ago, actually, that like my mom found a letter from my first grade teacher. It's like an end of the year letter or whatever. And it was like, Kayla was a great student, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, P.S., maybe she'll be a writer someday. And I thought that was so interesting because I don't remember ever thinking to myself, like, I'm going to be a writer. Like, that's my dream goal. Like, I remember doing all the like career days in school. And it was like, I always was kind of like, I know that I don't know really what I want to do, but like, I know that I don't want to like do the same thing all the time. Like, I don't want to sit in an office, like, all these kind of things. And so but I always did, like, eventually I did start writing. Like, I was a fangirl. I was very into like fandoms and stuff. Like, I got very, like, I always loved like movies and television shows. Like, I was one of those kids where, the parent would be like, my mom would be like, get outside and get some fresh air, like,
Yep,
stop
I was the
watching
same.
the Aladdin cartoon. I was very like into Disney, and like then that transferred, like, as I got older, I very much got into like television shows. And eventually, one of my friends that I rode horses with, she actually was like, Orlando Bloom is so hot in this movie, Lord of the Rings. Like, let's watch it. And at the time, I was like, I don't know if that's my cup of tea. Like, she's like, no, like, you have to watch it. And so I did. And then I became completely obsessed. And I decided then and there that I wanted to go to film school. And then film school led to eventually like screenwriting. And then at the same time, I'd been writing like fan fiction since I was a teen, and then mostly in college though. So it sort of just evolved. And eventually a friend of mine was like writing a book and said, why don't you write a book? And I was like, what? Why would I write a book? Like, I'm a screenwriter, like,
Yeah.
and so that's sort of how it started. That's sort of my like trajectory to that. But it's funny. It's like, I don't really remember as like a kid. Like, I just always was very imaginative, but there was never like anything where I was like, oh, like I want to write like romance novels, or like I didn't read romance novels. I did watch a lot of like rom-com television stuff, and like I shipped a lot of
Like
couples on
all of
fandom.
the what was that? Not Hallmark movies and stuff.
Yeah, like I was more like I always say, like a lot of I can see what my influences are in my writing, because like I was really big into like Never Been Kissed, Ever After, Princess Diaries 2, those type of things. But then I was also very much into like television shows, Smallville,
Oh my gosh, Smallville was the
Supernatural.
jam.
Yeah,
Did you ever
like,
get
and
into like Gilmore Girls?
I wasn't. That was more my sister's thing. I was
Mm.
like, I did the Supernatural Smallville. She did the Gilmore Girls, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was definitely like I was born in 1988. I was 2 years younger than her. So I kind of like, those were like more like my mom and sister shows. And then I would watch the other ones. But
Yeah.
I just like really, it's funny because I see how I ended up here, but it never like occurred to me that I would end up here. But like, given the fact that like I was a fangirl, and I was a shipper, like a hardcore shipper of like fans, like certain couples on TV shows and stuff, and like all the fan fiction that I consumed. And I've been doing that since I was young. Like,
Yeah.
I sent my friend a TikTok actually yesterday that I came across of the Power Rangers, and it was when the green Power Ranger comes back as the white Power Ranger, and the pink Power Ranger, Kimberly, sees Tommy, the white, and she thinks he like died or something, so she like faints, and then he like walks up and he's like holds up her head, he's like, "Hi, beautiful," and she like wakes up, she's like, "You're here." And I sent my friend, I was like, "This is Kayla Grosse lore. Like, this is how I started. Like, 5-year-old me sitting in front of like, the TV where you had to click the channels
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the little dial, like Tommy and Kimberly forever. Like that's where I started. So it doesn't surprise me, like, now that I see everything as like a scope of like how, it doesn't surprise me that I ended up where I was, but it was never like, I met people that are like, I've always wanted to write books. Like I was a book nerd. I read books. I spent so much time with like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and I was like,
Yeah.
that was not me. I was definitely more of like the media consumption, like in fandom girl, but I see how I got here.
I love that your flame of like being a diehard romantic did not get crushed, because I feel like a lot of times like that almost is shamed for young girls of like whenever like especially teenage years. I can remember my niece went through the Jonas Boys like and the Justin Bieber phase where it's fangirl hard, and they get so
Mhm.
shamed for that, and I'm like, leave those little girls alone, like let
Yeah.
them be in love with someone they're never gonna meet, or maybe hopefully they will one day. Um, like she got tickets to go see the Jonas Brothers, and she was just bawling, and I was like, I everyone in the world would be so lucky to have a passion like that, to be so passionate about something that they're just crying.
I actually had that too. I got NSYNC tickets in 5th grade and I cried. And I remember my parents like laughing, like, "Are you crying?" Yeah, I'm crying. Like I've always been that way. I've always been romantic. I've always had that. It's probably, if you're into astrology, my Pisces side, like I'm very watery. I'm very imaginative. I'm very like, and I'm surprised too, honestly, with like the relationships I've had and the things that I've gone through in my life, that I still have it. And sometimes it's hard. Like I posted on Threads, and it was funny how many people were like, "This is exactly it." Like I said, I think it was last week or so. I said, "So this is how it feels to be a single person writing romance," and it was like Eeyore jumping on a pogo stick. So it was like his little face, like coming across the screen up and down, and he just looks like so unenthused. And I said, sometimes that's what it feels like, because you're like writing these happy couples, like, and these guys that are all wonderful and amazing, and like everything works out for them, and you're like, "Oh, I'm jealous of you." You're like, "I wish I had this."
Secretly sabotaging the relationships in your books because you're sad.
Like, I want him, he's mine. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. But,
No,
it's
that's hilarious.
definitely, I feel like if you're a romantic, you'll always have that. Like, it's not something that, even if you're like scorned, it's like there's still like that hope, that like flicker, because that's what romance is about, right? Is like, it's like, even if you say you've given up on love, you truly have never given up on it. Like, there's still like that spark of hope that your Prince Charming or princess or whatever, will come. And
Yeah, they just
so,
write their fan fictions anonymously.
yes. I mean, that's what I did. People always try to get my like fan fiction names out of me, or like what I wrote. And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No one will ever know.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. No. That I love fan fiction. Fan fiction is where so many people get to experience what it is to kind of write without having to do all the world building and having to do, all the build up that it takes. And it's creates this passion and this love for writing that later on, you and you're like, you realize, oh yeah, now I have to develop my own stuff. And it's like, okay, it's a little harder now, but also I get to start with my own backstories. I get to start with my own stuff, and it's a lot of fun.
Mhm.
But fan fiction is, I've got so many AO3 like saved on my phone, just
I
all the
love that.
fan fiction sites.
I love that.
I'm a Dramoni, so I'm like always looking for good Draco and Hermione
That's
fan
very
fictions.
popular in the book space. I know there's been a lot of books that have, been turned into actual books,
Oh yeah,
and that
yes.
are in the process of also being done. So, and then also with the Star Wars guy, Adam Driver.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is, and that's it's fun. It, like, fan fiction is fun because, like, you can, unless you're doing an alternate universe or whatever, like, you do have um that kind of baseline. So it's like, it just allows your creativity to kind of like, flow and come out, and it's a good way to develop that muscle for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, first off, I have to say, I had a picture of Orlando Bloom as Legolas up in my bedroom as a kid. Like I had that in there for years. And when you said that, I was like, "Oh, I forgot about that till just now."
Well, I had everything. I had a Legolas cardboard cutout from Sam Goody. I ordered a poster of him that ended up, and it was really embarrassing. It came from like Europe, and I didn't know when I bought it that it came from there. I knew it was expensive, but like, I guess I did, I was young. I didn't realize like where I ordered from. And then I just thought it like got lost in the mail. And then my dad got like this random message from his cousin that he like never sees. And he's like, I think we got something for one of your daughters. So we had to drive out to pick, and they opened it, of course. We had to drive out and pick up this poster of Relatable. I was mortified. Oh my God, mortified. But
Oh
I was
God.
obsessed. I mean, I was obsessed. I saw all Lord of the Rings, all of the Pirates of the Caribbean, like, you name it, Elizabethtown, anything that he was in, I like consumed it. Now I could care less. But like, when I was
Right.
young, I was like, he's my man. I read Mary Sue fan fictions with him. Like, I was totally like, I definitely was one of those hardcore fangirls over him for sure.
I love it. I love it. Lean into that. That's so awesome.
I feel like now if I saw him, I wouldn't even care. Like, because I've lived in LA long enough too, where it's like, when you see a celebrity, you're just kind of like,
Yeah. They're
celebrities.
human too.
Yeah, they're just like us. That's very much what it feels like when you first move here, or if you come visit. It's like, you're like, oh my God, that's Ryan Gosling or something,
Yeah.
And then as you live here longer and longer, you're just like, all right, like,
Yeah.
just another person in the coffee line.
I bet you that's probably nice for them too. That's why probably so many of them live there. They're like, the locals don't really care as much, so they're able to be more just human and stuff. But if they congregated somewhere else where the locals aren't used to it, it would be this whole shit show.
The only person I ever freaked out and like couldn't find my words was like when I first moved back here, because I had a stint in New York, but then I moved back here, and Chris Pine was at a coffee shop. And what's funny is I actually had met him already a couple of times, like, because I went to some of his shows, his plays that he did. And he was nice. Nothing like, crazy, just like, hi, signed my playbill or whatever. But like, seeing him out at a coffee shop in the morning, I don't know what about it. I was just like, my friend was like, well, say like, I love your work, or like, hi. I was like, no, I can't. I was like, so one of those people that was just like awkwardly like looking at him because I get like secondhand embarrassment. And I was just like, I can't. My friend was like, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. She was like, you just like stood there pouring water so you could like look at him. And I was like, it was creepy. It's creepy. I just like, he was like, he's one person that I, for some reason, I just like froze.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I have no idea what I would do in this situation. I get like TikTokers who are, they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and I'm like, everyone would love to talk to you. I'm like, I get to talk to you. And so I get a little bit of fandom with that, but they're all, especially, guys who I've had on here and the girls I've had on here, they're just as chill as everyone else. Take away the numbers of followers and they're just other humans.
I was just talking to somebody about that yesterday, because I'll get sometimes when I repost people's stuff when they're posting about my books, they'll be like, oh my God, I'm fangirling. And I was like, over me? It feels very surreal, like to have that experience, because I've always been that person that's like the fangirl. So like to have somebody fangirl over you is a very odd experience, because you're like, because it really does, you really get that feeling of like, why me? Like you understand why, but like when it happens, it's an interesting thing. Or like when people come to see you or have your book signed, or they're pouring their hearts out why they love your books and they're crying. It's like it's very, it's an out of body experience, especially because of where I've come from as far as like being in fandoms and like having that own feeling of like doing that with celebrities or whatever TV shows. It's definitely a wild like oh whoa. Me.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And like you said, especially from your situation, coming from the fangirl going to the person who people are freaking out about. But I imagine that's a hard transition for anyone. And actually, it might be a little bit easier for someone who understands the other side of it versus the people who don't understand how hard fans can go, and then they become famous and they're like, whoa, what is going on? But you're like, oh yeah, I was one of those.
Yeah, that's true. It is. It's, you definitely like, that's why I always am just kind of like, I welcome it. It's fun, and I just make sure to like take time with people and stuff. Cause I get it. There's nothing worse than like when you meet somebody that you like admire or something like that, and then they're just like awful, or like not what you expected, or they make you feel like, you're less than because you're a fan or something. I definitely have had like experiences like that before too.
No fun, no fun. And even those moments, though, I try to think, okay, did they have a bad day? Did someone, something happened to them? Because I couldn't imagine being on all the time. Like if people saw me and ran into me a lot, where I was like, okay, my kid just dumped coffee all over me, all the behind the scenes stuff. And now we've got like people pushing stuff in our face a sign. Like I think there's a give them grace, but then there's the people who just keep proving over and over that they're assholes.
Definitely.
So you were in the like you were writing scripts and things like that, and was that something that you were going to college for, or how did that start?
Yeah, so I went to film school 1 year at Milwaukee, UW Milwaukee, and then I transferred to UW Madison, and they had more of like a narrative film program there. It's funny because I feel like really old now, because we were like, I think we were the last class to like film on 8mm and 35mm, like actual like film. And so, yeah, like we had courses like screenwriting courses and things like that. So I graduated with a Bachelor of the Arts in film, radio, and television. And I came out here in the summers and did internships. So I worked on the Fox lot, I worked on the Disney lot, I worked basically, though, that's where I got into the screenwriting aspect, because I initially was like, I want to direct. I want to be like the next like Peter Jackson. And then I realized that I didn't want to do that at some point. But then I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do. So I was interning at some places. And one thing that a lot of interns do out here is called script coverage. And it's basically like, they get a certain amount of scripts in from people. these creative executives, and they they have to like go through them. It's like somebody, like it's like a editor or something, like a publisher getting manuscripts, right?
Yeah.
Like people send them in, like agents send them in, whatever. And so they have this pile, and like they're not going to go through those, and because a lot of them usually aren't that great, so they'll give them to interns, and then the interns would like, you summarize it, you kind of lay out like what the genre is, like how many minutes it is, like all that kind of stuff, so that, and then you would like you would type it out, you'd staple it to the front of the script, and then you would give those to the people so that they could look at it and say like, read the synopsis and be like, no, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that a lot. And I was like, I could do this. Like I could write a screenplay, or like, and then also because I really love television shows, then it was like, oh, well, it would be really cool to like, still to this day, like one of my biggest dreams is to like still have a TV show and like have it be at Comic-Con, like where you have a panel at Comic-Con and everybody's like cheering for like, whatever. So that's kind of how that started. And so I started writing my own scripts. I have like one movie that I wrote that I'll probably never do anything with. I also am a big fan of musicals. I have like a first draft of a musical, Sans Music, that I wrote. And I have like a television pilot, 2 television pilots that I've written with a friend of mine. So yeah, that's sort of where that came from. It was like Lord of the Rings, want to be a movie maker, go to school, got these internships, figured it out. And then, that was what I initially planned to do with my life.
Do you feel like the film world missed out by not having, the things that you could have developed in it?
I mean, I still hope, you see a lot of these authors like getting picked up and then they sell the TV rights or the film rights. A lot of times they don't come to fruition, and that's very Hollywood. And that's one of the reasons why I actually started writing books and things like that, because Hollywood is so fickle, and specifically because I've always tried to write plus size characters in my stories, and so they're very like still very wary of having that type of media. That's kind of like a very small niche that they do some, but not a lot. Still, kind of freaks them out going outside the box.
Yeah.
So I do feel like they missed out for sure. And I hope that someday, I'll still I'll get like emails, hey, are the film and television rights available for this, book? And I'm like, yep. And then you never hear anything.
Right.
But so someday I still hope to, have that. But as of right now, nothing is in the works, but maybe someday.
Yeah. No, I that was something that I loved reading about you too, was that you are an advocate for, plus size women as main characters. And that's something that you said, was that, you write from a place of wanting people to feel seen, but also like visibility can be very vulnerable. And, you putting yourself out there, has that been something that has been kind of hard to handle with you being seen, even though you want people to be seen, with like gaining attention on your work and stuff? How do you feel with like, now you're in the spotlight?
I've never really had a problem with it. I think the only thing that I struggle with, and it's interesting, and I talk about this with some friends a lot, it's like, what I write is very, not only do I write plus size characters, but I also tend to write on the spicier side. And then on top of that, a lot of my books have queer characters. There's polyamory. So, and in some cases, with like books like X's and O's, it's a married couple that's poly. There's kink. It's very spicy. And then you've got a man that comes in and gets snowed in with them. And then there's a bisexual awakening, and 2 of them are plus size. So it runs sort of the gamut of like things that normally you don't find in, that's marginalized, like they're about marginalized communities. And then so you run into like, when you're promoting online these things, specifically on platforms like Instagram, you get an influx of these trolls and like spammers and things like that who love, I always joke, I'm like, they are obsessed with me. They share all my videos in group chats. They have to, or forums. Like that's what my friends and I have come to. Like there's no, because it's not just like, oh, I get a couple of comments. It's like I'm deleting like hundreds of comments, and like the shares on my videos are like thousands of shares, and it's like who's sharing that, you know what I'm saying? So it's like they're getting shared and shared and shared. So so I deal with a lot of death threats and harassment and all that kind of stuff, so that isn't fun.
For they give you death threat, like what is that centered around for writing what you write?
They just think I'm disgusting, and that I, and also too, I write age gap. So those groups of people really don't like age gap anything. So they think I'm just like a vile piece of scum, And so I get a lot. I mean, and they share and I was talking to a male book talker who's queer, and like, he was telling his husband, he was like, even though I'm queer and I am male and I post videos that have hot takes and stuff like that, he's like, I've never gotten one of those comments, never gotten a comment, never gotten a DM. And I was like, he's like, it's women that deal with this. And I was like, yes, every day. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know there's like a lot of people, not even that don't write plus size, but they write queer or polyamorous or the Why Choose books. And men just love to tell us like that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing because we're addicted to porn. They love to call me a gooner. They, I just, yeah.
What the fuck is a gooner?
I think it's a kid slang word nowadays. They're like, you're gooning. Like, I think I've looked it up before, but I think it's like you're gross, like you're like addicted.
Oh my god.
Anyway, it's like you're gooning, you're a gooner, like it. And so I get that a lot. But yeah, I think like for me, it's not so much, I'm comfortable. I've done a lot of work on myself as far as like my body. Of course, I have bad days. Everybody has bad days. Everybody has days where they're like, not comfortable with who they are and their bodies. At least I've never met anybody who's always like 100% all the time. But, I've done a lot of work over the years. And so I don't have any, like, I enjoy being like a voice and having a platform and like having readers that appreciate what I do and that see it as like, I feel like it's so important to have larger bodies represented in media. And so I feel like it's my purpose in life. And I kind of always felt like it's my purpose in life to like give a voice to people who are voiceless and to like give representation to people who need representation, because I know the only representation I had growing up in the 2000s was Jessica Simpson being a size 8 and people calling her fat, or a size 6 and people calling her fat, or like, a girl had a little pooch on her stomach and she was like fat. And it's like, and so I just developed such body dysmorphia because of this. And so, now when I actually see somebody who's my body type on media, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so cool. And so, I mean, the amount of messages I get from women that are like, you've made me believe that I can find love. You've made me see that my body is worth loving. I feel so represented. Like I cried during this book, and I also tend to represent like mental health struggles. And so I've had people say that like I've given them tools to like help them with their anxiety and like all these kinds of things. All of that to me is like, that's why I write. That's why I continue to write. So I don't mind being like the face of that at all, or like, and then also helping to platform other authors and stuff that are doing the same thing as me. And like, I don't mind that. I think the downside, like I just mentioned, is the like, opening up your Instagram every time I
Yeah. Oh my God.
I have like deleting comments, and it's crazy. And my favorite is when they say like, she's deleting comments. I'm like, well, yeah, it's my social media. I can do what I want with it.
Yeah, I mean, also, thank you because you're helping me get seen and you're helping my stuff go viral with all the comments and all the views you guys are giving me. But let's not, you don't want to spread the hate. You don't want other people to who come to your platform who are vulnerable seeing how just ripped down you are. That's not what you're promoting at all. That makes sense. And it's not, I don't see that as something as like a hiding anything. It's literally you're trying to cultivate this safe space for these people. Why would you leave that out there when you do have the control to delete it?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't really care if they comment on my stuff or they send me DMs, like whatever. It is what it is. I just delete and report. It's annoying, and I wish that Instagram took better care of the platform, um but my thing is I don't like when they comment under like people who've commented on my videos like, I
Yeah.
love this book, and they're like, they start like, you look like you would love this book or
Ugh.
something like that. And I try to delete those like as quickly as I see them,
Yeah.
because to me that's not okay. I'm like, you can come for me, but don't come for my readers. Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. I would, yeah, I don't know how you're not living in like a constant state of rage. Like I'm the same as you. Come for me. That's not that big of a deal. But as soon as you mentioned like coming after the people who are being vulnerable and admitting that they love your books and stuff, no, you piece of shit. Like, do not touch my readers.
yeah, that's what I don't like. Thankfully that doesn't happen as much, but it does happen every once in a while, especially if I'm like not really, because sometimes I just get sick of deleting, so I'll just let it
Yeah.
go, and I'm just like, I'll just let this. That's what I did the other day, and then I was like, crap, I like saw that it had like, and so I actually went on Threads and I was like, can anybody like come and comment on this video, because I'm like, I keep getting on the wrong side of TikTok. And it was great. The community really showed up. I
I
have like 100
love
comments,
Threads. Threads
like,
is amazing.
but like on it, and people went, but yeah, like that was one thing I was worried about though. I was like, oh, they're gonna start commenting on it and the trolls are gonna start commenting on that, and some did, and so I was very cognizant of that and like was deleting as fast as I could. But it's yeah, that platform is like the wild west. I have that happen sometimes on TikTok, but mostly it's Instagram and Facebook. And
Yeah.
Facebook is where you get like creeper old men that are like, I'll get a lot of messages from them like, hey, pretty lady.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
like them big. Okay,
Yeah.
go home. Like, please leave. Like,
Yeah.
get out of my DMs.
Where do you think that comes from with you mentioned, your male friend not getting anything like that, and he even does a little bit more risque things, but then you do get that. Where do you think that comes from with people feeling like they can to females?
I definitely think, it's misogyny, and it's this idea that like women, especially when it comes to like sexuality, and expressing sexuality, and that we're not supposed to, like, we're supposed to be pious and like, obedient, and we can't have sexual desires. And so here I am. Not only do I have books that are very sexual, I'm open about them being sexual. On top of that, they're usually queer or have a queer character in them, or a queer side character. And then on top of that, you add the fact that they're fat. Oh Lord. It's like, it's too much for them to handle. And I think, with men just kind of have always been able to exist as they like, not as they are, because obviously that's not true. So that's the wrong way to say it. But it's especially this day and age, I feel like men sort of just will leave other men alone on the internet, and they'll just band together when they find something that they don't like. And then it's like, but when they see my videos, I think it just angers them. Like the liberation of the female body and mind, it makes them mad because they don't have the control that they used to have. Right. And so it's like, what I write wouldn't have been something that would have been a thing 10 years ago. So It's like now it's right in their faces as they're scrolling, and it's like, oh, a sexually free woman who like, and they're just,
Can't have
you're
that.
ugly, fat, and you're addicted to porn. It's like,
Yeah.
that's like their go-to, because I feel like that those insults still have the same power that they held back in the 2000s, which maybe
Yeah.
they do for some, but like for me, no. I'm just like, you're annoying, like delete, report. It's more of an annoyance. That's what I get to. It's just like, it's like, ugh, like, come on, Instagram, like, yeah, like have better, like your AI cares about a fake boob of a character art blurred out, and you'll like threaten my account, but then I can get DMs from men multiple times a day telling me to go off myself, and that's totally acceptable.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you fell into, mainly men messaging you, because I've seen like, I don't think it's a male female thing. I think it's just an unhealthy thing, because I've seen so many females ripping other females down for what they enjoy and what they're doing, and I think it's just overall this just unhealthiness on each side, and kind of like what you were saying, before men were allowed to they were allowed to be a lot more sexual with, publicly sexual with things like commenting on people, the way people look, and just it was so much more acceptable. And now that it's starting to come out to where women are able to do this, a lot of them were shamed for stuff too, and I think it's a lot of that residual shame of like men getting shamed for looking at porn. That's a bad thing if men look at porn. And I'm like, listen, if you like looking at porn and your partner's okay with it, and you're not doing it in an unhealthy way, fucking look at it. I like porn too. So high five. But then it's the same thing with women. Like, do not shame us for something that you guys got pissed off that women were shaming you about. They were shaming you for enjoying porn, and you were getting upset about that. Now you're just turning it right around and shaming women for their books that they like. It doesn't make sense. And it's coming from unhealthy spaces on both sides. Men and women shame both sides of it. And it's like, guys, come on. You're doing the exact same thing that you got pissed off at them for doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just an interesting space to like be in. And I do get some comments from women, definitely, but it's disproportionately male for my platforms. But I also do partially think a lot of that has to do with that I'm openly fine with being fat and having a larger body and like expressing sexuality through that, because I also think that being fat has for so long been such a bad thing and still is seen as like a bad thing in society. It's like the easiest go to for like a comic relief or joke, with a comedian, or like on, shows and televisions. It's like a very easy insult, that people still use. Or like I remember when I saw the new, like the Marvel movie a couple of years ago where Thor was in like a fat suit.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody in the theater was just like, thought it was so funny. And I was just like, it's not funny, like, because you're equating his laziness to, and like that he's depressed and whatever. So he got fat because he's depressed and lazy, and like that's like the way that our society still like perceives, that. And so, I don't know where I was going with this, but basically it's like, so sometimes women, still have, a lot of times women still have like internalized fat phobia. So I'll get comments, but for men, I think it just like really makes them angry when their shaming doesn't do anything. And so it's like they share it with their friends, and it's like becomes like group shaming, because I remember a long time ago, not a long time ago, like maybe it was a couple months ago or last year or something, like saw a TikTok that was like, bring fat shaming back, because fat people will only get skinny if you shame them. And it's like,
Wow.
what? Like, what? It
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is still the way that a lot of people think. And unfortunately, because I think there's been a lot of work done in a lot of different spaces, but that is still a very easy insult and way to like cut somebody down, which is why I think, the work that not only my work, but, there's so many amazing authors out there that are, doing what I'm doing as well, that are trying to like combat that. And it makes people mad because they don't want people to accept and love themselves, right? It's like they want you to like still try to conform to the society, how they like see us and want us to be seen. And it's like it's all about like controlling, right? And controlling the narrative. And here we are like pushing back against it.
Yeah, no, and I love seeing that in so many aspects. And I love, you're the first writer who this is your niche, this is your thing that I've talked to, that is pushing back against these things. And I love seeing it in all areas. The LGBTQ community is doing it. You're doing it. This is, I think it's needed because if we continue to not push back against these things, they just control so many more lives. And you don't have to live in fear of people judging you of these kind of things. Like, I think, and I love that you also said that you put mental health things in your book too, because once you get to the point to where you're like, this stuff doesn't affect you as much, because for one, you love your body. There's other people out there who are going through and they are pushing for this motion to get rid of the shaming. Not get rid of it, it's never going to go away, there's always going to be unhealthy people, but pushing against it. I think it's so needed, especially right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so great. Like it's become, more of a, like when I first started thinking about writing women that looked like me, I kind of was on a journey, right, to like find books, and there wasn't too many of them at the time. And I consumed them all. Most of them were Olivia Dade, who still writes plus size people, and I love her to pieces. And now there's like, I mean, there's a huge community, and I love like Leonor Salinas and Alexia Onyx and Rebecca Weatherspoon and of course Olivia Dade and Danielle Harris. And I mean, the list, goes on and on. And there was a lot of, Black women too that were in this space writing too before it was like cool to do so. And I feel like because now too I see a lot of like thin women writing curvy or plus size people as well. And so thanks to those women like, oh, Reese Ryan, she's been doing it for a long time, and like Harlequin romances and stuff like that. And I didn't know where to find all those things, and now I do. So I try to read all of their books too and support them, because there's just so many people. I always see like posts on Threads that are like, I'm sick of the thin women in books, like I was like, Google it, like, because
Yeah.
now like, there's just like comparatively, even just in the last 4 or 5 years, because of the explosion of book talk and everything like that, it used to be a lot harder. Because if you went on Goodreads, a lot of the books were like weird, like you type in like curvy or plus size and they're like these fetish books, or like and now it's like if you Google plus size romance, or like go on TikTok and look for plus size romance Rex, I mean, Mary, Fat Girls in Fiction, her whole page is that. Like, so like the resources are abundant now. So it's like when I see those threads, I'm like, there's so much, like there's so much. You just have to search, you have to do the work, you have to look for it, right? And then once you do it, your eyes will be opened. And there's just so many good people now, and amazing writers like doing such important, work. So it's exciting to be in this, like in the indie and trad pub even, but mostly indie like space, being able to tell our stories, because there's nobody telling us we can't.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you could argue that that's not the case anymore, but like, we're fighting the good fight over here.
Right. That's so exciting. I imagine, like you said, coming from the past 4 or 5 years to where you see that community growing more, that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's cool to be a part of it. And I definitely was not like the first one to do it. So it's cool to like, though, be able to have the privilege and I got their part of it was luck, like having an influencer pick up Trick Shot and shout it about, to her like 1 million followers, like that was a game changer, you know?
Yeah.
So, I feel very lucky, and I'm lucky that I have now so many readers that like support me through like my Patreon and stuff so that I can continue to, do this full time and write more books and like continue to advocate for people in larger bodies and queer people. And, so it's cool that I get to do this.
Yeah. No, that's how I and Trick Shot's really spicy too. So that's fun that someone was like also has a big following and pushing a content that's like of all the books you were gonna pick, that one you're like, yes.
Well, it was interesting. Like that was my first like erotica that I wrote, and it was my first MMF, and that's like kind of the book that I'm mostly known for. And now Axis and O's, has really been popular. That's my second most popular book. And again, it's MMF and 2+ size bodies and very, very spicy. So yeah, it's fun. I like that those are my most popular,
Yeah. So with you having your fantasy background of like the Lord of the Rings was kind of, your intro into the fantastical world, but now you're writing the romance side. Do you feel like you have to be a brand to be successful and kind of continue this romance, spicy brand that you've kind of done? Or is there ideas that you in the future want to go into more of fantasy writing, or what does that look like for you?
So my first ever book that I actually unpublished recently, because technically I ended on a cliffhanger, and I felt really bad that people would go read my backlist and then they were like, where's the other book? And I'm like, so my first book, Wish Revelations, that was not a plus size character. It was just a girl, and it was very like fantasy. It was a retelling of Adam and Eve. It was about these people that were wishers. That was what they were. And like they could wish anything into existence, basically. So it's the idea that they created everything.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And Eve had like Adam and Eve. It was like a whole thing. I don't know how I came up with it, but yeah, so that was my first book. I was telling somebody, I said, one day maybe I would love to go back and rewrite it and edit it. And like, because I felt like it also wasn't a representation of like who I am now, like as a writer.
I'm right
And
there
so,
with you. I unpublished my first book. I was like, nobody read this.
yeah,
Don't look
like,
at
it's
it.
funny, like, I mean, people liked it. I would get random messages, like, and I feel bad that like, people read it and then they never, because the second book I actually haven't written. It was like I wrote it, I think, after I Like You Like That, or I think, and I had intended to finish it, and then I just like it just didn't bring me joy like my other stories. So I was
Yeah.
like, no, so I just kept like putting it off, and then I was like, another year went by, and another year went by. And so finally, like a month or two ago, I was like, I just need to take it down, like, because I don't feel any sort of pull. But eventually I would love to. I also have like 50,000 words of a siren / Leviathan fantasy romance.
Ooh.
And I would love to
Ooh.
revisit that someday. She's plus size, the siren. So like, but that, again, it's like if I lose spark for something, then it's like,
Oh yeah.
it'll just like go. So but I would like to eventually, but also too, so my Christmas book that I haven't started it yet, but I think it's going to be paranormal. And so
That might get your spark going.
yeah, that's like going to be my first. I mean, it's still contemporary, like it's not, and I've also would like to dabble in Omegaverse. And, so there's a lot of things. And that's the beauty about being indie. But it does kind of, sometimes I always joke, it's like a weird, like, I have this like weird space that I'm in, because I've got like, I have my contemporary romance side, which is I Like You Like That, Rain Me In, Wrote Me In, and my newest one that comes out on Thursday, April 17th, Change of Pace. And so those are like my contemporary books. They're spicy, but more like 2-3 chili peppers, more on the like lower end. And they're my MF couples. And then I have Trick Shot, Puck Shy, Axes and O's, and Silver Fox, and Whirlwind. Well, Whirlwind I would put more in my contemporary too, but like it, they're very they're kind of different, and so it's like this weird like I have like two different types of readers that I have. I have my like kind of OG readers that came to me from my Like You Like That, Rein Me In. Those are my contemporary spicy people, and then I've got my influx that came in from Trick Shot that like when they read my contemporary, you know, they'll give them like a 1 chili pepper spice, because if you compare
yeah, comparatively,
it's like they're so like the spice levels are so different.
Right.
So, but that's me. Like so I kind of just brand them though under all the same, because they're all plus size and they're all spicy, but they're just kind of like varying in degrees. And like, so it's interesting though, because sometimes I do like when people come up to me at conventions and they're new to me, they're like, explain your books. Like,
yeah,
where should I start? I'm like, okay, well, are you like an erotica girly? Are you more like, you know, you like your cowboy romances or whatever? And so that's sort of how I start, because it's like it's such a wide spectrum. But that's the beauty about being an indie, is that I can do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes so, but I feel like they're always going to be connected, because my characters, there's always going to be at least one person who's plus size in that. And then I do have that, of course, I'm me. So all my books are going to have the same like style, which I say is very cinematic. Like I get a lot of people saying like, when I read your books, it's like I'm watching a movie. I'm like, well, that makes sense, because I went to film school.
Thank you, background. yeah.
So, you know, but I did that on purpose, because like when I wrote I Like You Like That, since it was my first like kind of like book where I was like, okay, I'm venturing into like book talk romance, like all this kind of stuff. I was like, but I want it to be able to like be made into a movie, if that were to ever be the case. So like I write everything so it can be made into a movie. Like I think that Rein Me In would be like an amazing television show, because it's got like everything that the CW could ever want in it. You know what I'm saying? So like I do, and I say that a lot too. A lot of my books are like very CW-esque. Like a lot of my characters have like my favorite CW character names in them. Like I've got my Lucas and my Nathan, and you know, from Monster Hill.
Yeah.
And you know, so I definitely have a style, but so I have all that, and then I sort of like work within that style. And yeah, it's fun though. So I definitely, long story short, I definitely feel like I'll get back into it probably, especially with this Christmas book. And I do feel like in a way Axes and O's had kind of a fantasy element to it. Because I kind of almost felt like it was magical when I was writing it, because like he gets snowed in with them, like in this cabin, and they all have names, like nicknames, Fox, Lamb, Wolf. And I kind of like did almost like this whole, like where it feels like it was fate and destiny, you know, like they're soulmates. So I definitely, because me personally, my favorite trope is fated mates, or like soulmate trope.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of like, even though technically none of my books are like,
you're still putting that element in there.
It's that element. And, you know, some people call it insta love or insta lust, or, you know, that type of thing. But I personally like that, because again, you know, if you look at where my lore started, as people say, like all of it was, you know, Aladdin and Jasmine, Tommy and Kimberly from the Power Rangers, like other Disney movies, Little Mermaid, you know, where it's like that meet cute. You have it meet cute, and then it's like you go through the motions that would like, but you always start with that like instant, you know.
Yeah.
So and in a way, isn't all romance insta love?
Right. Yeah. No, it also, like, I feel like that's also in that genre, and then, you know, that's kind of expected. And I feel like if you mess with what readers are going to expect, it kind of is like, this is not how it's supposed to go. The romance is supposed to be meet cute. It's supposed to be, you know, the thing happens that conflicts them, and then they come back together and there's a happy ending. Like, if you mess with that, that formula, you're going to get in trouble.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And yeah, somebody asked me, where was it? They asked me, oh, for Change of Pace, because Change of Pace, I have a heart condition, and so I wanted to for a long time write a story with someone who has Kawasaki disease, or who had it and has like the effects of it, because that's what I live with. And so I came up with this idea for Change of Pace, this road trip romance. And so when I started promoting it, somebody was like, they saw bucket list. She has a heart condition. They're like, oh my God, does she die at the end? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
I was like, of
Yeah,
course
they
not.
need to know. They need the reassurance.
I was like, I'm not Nicholas Sparks.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna find out she's a ghost at the end. Like, like
Yeah.
they live happily ever after. It's not a Hallmark movie and mystery, everyone's good,
Yep. No, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that too, I was like, oh, like instantly.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, that's I feel the heartbreak coming.
Yeah. She's it was an interesting book to write. It was definitely an emotional journey. But yeah, all my books will always have a happily ever after. I had one person who got angry at me because they told me that was a spoiler. I was like, no, it's a romance novel. If there's no HEA, it's not a romance novel.
Yeah, you start getting into your grimdark and things like that.
Yeah. Because I've seen lots of discourse where there's been books that publishers have said are romance and then they're not. Like,
Yeah.
and the people are dead, or like somebody dies or whatever, and they're mad. And I would be too if you go into a book thinking like, oh, this is good. It's like Walk to Remember.
Oh,
Spoiler
no.
alert, and I think that's what people thought when they saw Change of Pace. They're like,
Yeah.
she's gonna die like Mandy Moore and Watch to Remember. No.
No, there's a lot. Nicholas Sparks has ripped my heart out so many times. I don't trust him at all. Like I do
One of
not
my
trust him
favorite
from page
movies,
one.
right? One of my favorite movies of his is the one with Zac Efron, Charlie St. Cloud.
Oh yeah.
And that one's like a tearjerker for sure.
Mine was the one, I don't remember the name of it, but it was the guy and the girl who were in a relationship when they were younger. They split apart. They went their own ways. The woman got married, had kids, and was divorcing her husband, and then got back in contact with him, and he ended up getting hit by a car, and his heart was used on her son as a heart transplant and saved her son's life.
That's how it ended?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, no.
It was just my heart felt ripped out. I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
But no. So okay, Change of Pace is coming up. It's coming out this week, correct?
Yes, Thursday, April 17th. Yes.
Awesome. Let's talk. Tell readers, what can we expect from that?
So Jessie is a Kawasaki disease survivor, and she has a ICD implant, which is a pacemaker and defibrillator implant. And she has gone through it, and after she has this life-changing thing happen to her, she's like, you know what? I want to live life to the fullest, because you never know when, your time is up. And so she makes a bucket list. And on that bucket list, the number one thing is to have a one-night stand. And so cue Asher Jameson, and they meet, and they have a fun night together, and she thinks, I'm never going to see this guy again, which sad, but also like, no, like this was my bucket list. And lo and behold, she finds out that it's her best friend's brother.
Oh,
and he lives in an RV and travels around, and they have the sister's fiance has the brilliant idea that they should travel together so she can check off her bucket list before she starts her new job. And so they set out on a 20-day road trip together, but she has put the gauntlet down that they must remain friends.
That sounds amazing.
Yes. So that's the story is they go on a fun adventure across the United States. And it was my first road trip romance. I never thought I'd write one, but one day I was like working out, and I was like, and it just came to me, and I was like, I'm gonna write this. And so I did, and now it's out. It's definitely was probably one of the hardest books I've ever had to write because it was so personal to me. With my, because I also have an ICD implant, my little pacemaker in there. So, it was definitely like it's definitely my heart book, I feel like, for sure. So, hopefully people like it. It's different than anything I've ever written. So, like I said, it's the contemporary side of my books. So,
Do you feel like writing about that, like especially the heart condition and things, do you feel like it was healing for you, or was it more like having to uncover old wounds?
I wouldn't say it was healing because I feel like it's a very like current reality for me of like, living with it's interesting because, I want to be careful with my words. It's like it's something that I live with, but something that also I'm just like used to living with. And like I think I did a lot of like healing over the years of like that. But I think it was cathartic maybe in a way, like to like give Jessie this love story because she deserves it. And I think that it was like a good reminder that like no matter what like you've gone through or like how you're like what the things you have to overcome, specifically when you have like a chronic illness or a disability and things like that, it's like you're still deserving, like you're not a burden. Those are always good reminders for
Did it
everyone.
bring up
Like
emotion, like anger for you? Did it like were you kind of like, I because I imagine there's this element of like, this happened to me and now I have to deal with it. And like, writing a character who's also dealing with it, did it bring up any sort of like resentment to, she gets to do this thing that you really wish you could do?
think so, because I wrote a lot of her into like a lot of me into her, and so it was very much like more so than any character that I've ever done that with. Like Birdie has a lot of me in her too, but like from my Like You Like That, um but Jessie for sure. And I'm pretty outgoing. I'm definitely somebody that's like, oh, you tell me I can't. I'm very defiant. I can't do that. Like I think I was riding roller coasters 2 months after I got my ICD implant. I did not ask my doctor if I would do that, but like I did anyway.
Yeah.
I'm very much like, and don't, this isn't a thing to tell people that to go do what I do.
Yeah,
Clearly,
yeah.
I'm reckless to
Disclaimer.
an extent. And I ride horses, and um I'm like I've always been like that though. So but then more so like when I had my first heart attack, I was kind of in like a bad situation in life, and so it was a wake up call for me. And so I did write that into Jessie's story, not that she was in a bad situation, but just like that she uh like has this sort of wake up call, like, girl, what are you doing? And so
Yeah.
that was very much my story too. It was like, girl, what are you doing? Like, get it together,
Yeah.
And so it was like a wake up call for me to like, so I don't have a bucket list, but I do have like every January, for New Year's Eve, I write like a list of goals, right? Of things that I want to do. And I'm very much like a person who's like, I want to achieve, right? So like whatever that takes to like do that. And then like, and a lot of times too, it's experiences. Like when I was in that bad situation and I was like, oh, one of my biggest dreams was to go to New Zealand, Lord of the Rings girl.
Ooh, yeah.
And I would like look at, plane tickets and be like, oh my God, they're so expensive. Like, and I would just cry because I was like, I'm never going to get to go. Like I'm always going to be broke, and like I'm always going to be in this bad situation, and like I'm just never like, and I would look at my friends still in Hollywood because I was in New York at the time, and they were still chasing their dreams, and I was like, I'm not there anymore. And like I just felt so sorry for myself, and I was just like, the life sucks. I was not happy. And then it's like I had the heart attack, and then I was like, people say like, oh, does your life flash before your eyes? And I actually have this scene in Change of Pace, and it's like, and Jessie, I have her do and I say, no, like it wasn't like that. It was like, I knew I was going to live. I don't know why I knew that. I just did. And I was like, I know I'm going to live, but you have unfinished business. There's things you haven't done. You need to like I said, wake up call, get it together. So like, I was like, I need to move back to LA. I need to do this. And so it was like, you know, progression, one thing. So every year I try to like progress to like the next thing. Right. So Jessie is sort of discovering that, right? But she does it in the form of like a bucket list of like, but she still sort of has this like thing that she's sort of pressing up against because everything's more like fresh to her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't get angry. It was more just like maybe it gave me appreciation for how far I've come from the moment that I had my first heart attack to like now, which I think I've been like, oh my God, 2022, I think was my last heart attack. I've had 3. So it was like, that was my last one. So I've had multiple years now where I'm like, good, you know, so it's like,
Yeah.
sort of these like mile marker stones of like, you know, just keep going.
That's so cool.
So I think it was
I love that.
with Jessie to be like,
Yeah.
to sort of like give her part of my journey, but she also has her own journey with Asher in the book.
Yeah.
And Asher is kind of like, I envisioned him as sort of this like guide, almost like the physical manifestation of like a spirit guide in a way.
Yeah. That's going to be the new thing. All the readers are going to be like, I need my spirit guide.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need their knight in shining armor. They need their man who's going to help them heal.
Yes. You know, and that's like the dream, right? Like a person in your life, whether it's a man or a friend or whoever, you know, that's going to like be like, you got this, like, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Kayla, that is fantastic. This has been such a great conversation. And before we end it, because I know all of the listeners are going to be like, okay, this girl has taken us through the ringer with emotions on all of this. Let's let them know where they can find your books and where they can follow you on social medias.
Yeah, so you can find all my books on Amazon, also Barnes and Noble online. All my books are in audio. You can find most of them, you know, Audible, iTunes, Spotify. There are a couple that are just on Audible, but most of them are wide. My website you can find too, kaylagrosse.com. I have a Patreon, which is super fun. We're a community of like, oh my gosh, over 400 on there and growing every day. Everybody's amazing on Patreon. And I give lots of like goodies and dirty artwork over there. So if you like dirty artwork, come on over. That's patreon.com/Kayla Grosse. And then Instagram, Kayla, this is where I always am like the social media manager that I used to be in another life. It's like, well, why? Because everything's different. At Kayla Writes Life on Instagram, at Kayla Grosse Author on TikTok. And then I have a Facebook page, but I have a Facebook group that's fun too. And that's Kaylaholics Facebook group. So those are all the places.
Everyone clip this spot so you can go back and listen to each one and go follow all the different handles.
Different. I don't know. When I started my Instagram, I was like, it sounds cute. Kayla Writes Life. And now it's like, now I can't change it. It's like on all my books and everything. So I'm just like, all right, well, here's all the random usernames.
Yeah. But also, high five for being indie, because if you were traditional, that wouldn't fly.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because I have my like old Instagram account, which is like my personal one that I never really use. Like I always be like, oh, I forget that I have that one now. And that's Kayla Grosse. But sometimes I'll go over there and there'll be like a bunch of new follow requests because of course people go search my name. But I have in my profile, like follow my author account.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Redirect them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. You were so amazing. I love this conversation. I think it is something that this podcast definitely needed. Like I said, you are a first person who represents bigger girls on here, and I love that. So I'm so excited to see everyone get excited for this episode. If you haven't already, go follow Kayla, go like her books or her pages, and leave reviews if you have read any of her books. You don't have to always leave the big prose review where you talk about everything. Even just the stars are so important to authors. Just give some stars. It's so helpful.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of L3. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. Remember, every story has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep listening.